What happens when destiny chooses you, but everyone you trust throws you away? For Alara Thorne, life had been a symphony of silence. An Omega in the Silvercrest pack, she'd learned early that her voice didn't matter. Not in council meetings, not in training yards, not even at her own table, where her parents exchanged worried glances whenever her wolf tried to surface. Tried and failed, choked back by some invisible chain wrapped around her soul. She worked in the pack kitchens. She kept her eyes down. She wore plain clothes that didn't draw attention. And when Alpha Ronan Blackthorne began courting her, and Omega when he could have had any beta female in 3 territories, she'd allowed herself to believe in fairy tales. But when he stood before the entire pack during the Harvest Moon ceremony, pulled his hand from hers and said the words that would shatter her world, everything changed. And what happens next, no one was prepared for. The Harvest Moon hung fat and golden over Silvercrest territory, turning the assembled pack into a sea of shadow and amber light. 300 wolves stood witness in the ceremonial grounds, their eyes reflecting moonlight like scattered stars. Alara had dressed carefully that evening, a simple white dress that her mother had altered, hands trembling at the kitchen table. She'd woven tiny flowers into her braid. The scent of lavender and morning dew clung to her skin, the only perfume she could afford. Ronan had asked her to stand beside him at the Alpha's platform. He'd kissed her forehead that morning, his scent, forest and embers and ozone and steel, wrapping around her like a promise. "Tonight changes everything," he'd whispered. She'd thought he meant their mating ceremony. She'd been wrong. Ronan stood at the carved stone podium, his massive frame silhouetted against the moon. At 6'4", he commanded attention without effort. His dark hair caught the light. His gray eyes swept over his pack with the confidence of someone who'd never known rejection, never tasted fear. When he raised one hand, silence fell like a blade. "My pack," he began, his voice carrying across the grounds without strain. "Tonight, I make a decision that will secure our future for generations." Alara's heart hammered. She stood 3 steps below him, where tradition dictated the Alpha's chosen mate should wait. Her hands were clasped in front of her, trembling slightly. She could feel the eyes of the pack on her back, some curious, some pitying, some angry that an Omega had risen so high. "For weeks I have considered who should stand beside me as Luna." Ronan's gaze swept past her, landing on someone in the crowd. "Who has the strength to lead with me? The bloodline to produce strong heirs, the power to defend this territory when I cannot." The first cold finger of dread traced down Alara's spine. "An Alpha needs an equal, not a burden." His words fell like stones into still water, each one sending ripples of shock through the assembled wolves. "My wolf has made its choice based on strength, not sentiment." No, Alara thought. No, he wouldn't. "Selena Ashwood, step forward." The crowd parted. Through the gap walked a woman who moved like violence wrapped in silk. Tall, powerful, beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful. Her auburn hair fell in perfect waves. Her amber eyes glowed with triumph. The scent of cinnamon and iron and blood wafted from her, heady and sharp. Selene Ashwood, beta female, daughter of the pack's war chief, everything Alara was not. "Ronan," Alara's voice came out broken, barely a whisper. "What are you doing?" He finally looked at her. For just a moment, something flickered in his eyes, regret perhaps, or shame. Then it hardened into resolve. "What I must." The bond between them, fragile and new, formed over months of courtship, not yet sealed by mating, began to tremble. Alara felt it like a living thing in her chest, a golden thread stretched taut. "You said," her voice cracked, "you said tonight would change everything." "It will." He turned to face the pack fully, his broad shoulders blocking out the moon. "I, Ronan Blackthorne, Alpha of the Silvercrest pack, formally reject Alara Thorne as my chosen mate." The thread snapped. Pain exploded through Alara's chest, white-hot, searing, as if someone had reached into her ribcage and torn out her still-beating heart. She stumbled backward, gasping, one hand flying to her sternum, the bond severed with such force that she tasted copper. Her wolf howled inside the cage that had always contained it, howled and thrashed and hurt. Around her, the pack's collective scent shifted to shock, pity, and Worst of all, satisfaction from those who'd never believed an Omega deserved an Alpha's attention. "No," Alara breathed. She couldn't get enough air. The world tilted sideways. "Please, Ronan, Guards," Ronan said flatly, not looking at her anymore. "Remove her from the platform." Two beta males materialized at her sides, their hands closed around her arms, not rough, but firm, unyielding. They lifted her as if she weighed nothing, her feet leaving the ground. "Wait!" Desperation clawed up her throat. I need to tell you." But Ronan had already turned to Celine, offering his hand. The beta female took it with a smile sharp enough to cut. She stepped onto the platform, into the space Alara had occupied moments before. The guards carried Alara down the steps. The crowd parted for them, a canyon of staring eyes and tilted heads. Some faces showed pity, others showed relief. Finally, the Omega knows her place. A few young wolves laughed behind their hands. "Please," Alara whispered to the guards, "let me speak to him, just for a moment. There's something he needs to know." The guard on her left, Marcus, who'd sometimes snuck her extra portions from the communal meals, wouldn't meet her eyes. "I'm sorry, Alara. Alpha's orders." They deposited her at the edge of the ceremonial grounds, beyond the circle of torchlight. The moment they released her, Alara's legs gave out. She collapsed onto the cold earth, her white dress pooling around her like a surrender flag. Behind her, Ronan's voice rang out again. "Celine Ashwood, I claim you as my chosen mate before the moon goddess in this pack." A cheer went up. Howls split the night, celebratory, wild, excluding. Alara pressed both hands against the ground, trying to breathe through the pain. The bond severing had left a ragged wound in her chest, and every heartbeat pulsed fresh agony through it. Her wolf whimpered, retreating deeper into whatever prison had always held it. "I need to tell him," she thought wildly. "He needs to know about Alara." She looked up. Her father stood over her, his weathered face carved from stone. Beside him, her mother wrung her hands, tears streaming down her face. But she didn't move to help, didn't kneel, didn't reach out. "Papa," Alara whispered, "help me, please. You cannot stay here." Her father's voice was flat, final. "Pack law is clear. A rejected wolf has no place in the territory." "But I'm your daughter." "You were our daughter." Her mother's voice broke on a sob. "But we cannot harbor a rejected Omega. It would displease the Alpha. We cannot risk. We have your brothers to think of, their futures." "Please." Alara tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't support her. "Just one night. I'll leave at dawn, I swear it. Just let me—" "No!" Her father's hand moved to the knife at his belt, not a threat but a reminder. Pack law allowed a rejected wolf to be driven out by force if necessary. "You leave now, or we will make you leave." Something inside Alara fractured that had nothing to do with the bond. She stared at her parents, at their resolute faces, their fear disguised as cruelty, and understood that she'd been alone long before Ronan spoke those words on the platform. She'd always been alone. "I see." Alara's voice came out hollow. She pushed herself upright, swaying, one hand still pressed to her chest where the phantom bond burned. "I'll go." "Alara," her mother reached out, then snatched her hand back. "I'm sorry. If things were different, but they're not." Alara looked past them, toward the tiny cottage that had been her home for 23 years, toward the room where she'd dreamed small dreams, never daring to want more than survival. "Goodbye." She turned toward the forest. "Wait." Her mother's voice stopped her. "At least take—" "I don't want anything from you." Alara didn't look back. "You've given me everything I need to know." The forest swallowed her in 3 steps. Behind her, the pack's celebration continued, howls of joy echoing between the trees like mockery. And tucked beneath her heart, secret, precious, terrifying, the reason she'd needed to tell Ronan the truth. She was 6 weeks pregnant with his child. "Children," her wolf whispered from its cage. 3. Can't you feel them? But Alara couldn't feel anything beyond the pain and the cold. The first snow of winter began to fall as she stumbled deeper into the wilderness, wearing only a thin white dress in hope that died with every step. The blizzard hit an hour after she crossed into neutral territory. Alara had grown up hearing stories about the Deadlands, the stretch of wilderness between pack territories where rogue wolves hunted and ancient things still stirred. No pack claimed it. No wolf with sense ventured there alone. The trees grew taller here, their branches twisted into shapes that looked almost like claws reaching for the sky. The ground was rocky and uneven, treacherous in darkness. And now, snow fell in thick curtains that erased the world. She couldn't feel her feet anymore. The thin dress clung to her skin, soaked through and freezing. Her braid had come undone, wet hair plastering to her face and neck. Every breath burned her lungs. The wound in her chest where the bond had been throbbed in time with her heartbeat, empty, broken, wrong, wrong, wrong. Keep moving, she told herself. Just keep moving. But her body had other ideas. Her legs folded beneath her without warning, sending her crashing to her knees in the snow. She caught herself on her hands, gasping, shaking so hard her teeth rattled. "Get up," she whispered. "Please, for them, get up." Her wolf didn't respond. It hadn't stirred since the rejection, curled tight in that unreachable place inside her. Alara forced herself forward, not walking, crawling now through snow that reached her elbows. Her hands had gone numb. She couldn't tell if the wetness on her face was tears or melting snow or both. Through the white curtain ahead, a shape emerged, dark and angular, a structure. Hope flared, painful and desperate. It was a barn, old, half-collapsed, the roof caved in on one side and the door hanging from a single hinge. But it was shelter. It was something. Alara crawled the final yards on her belly, her muscles screaming. She dragged herself through the broken doorway and collapsed on the dirt floor, too exhausted to move deeper inside. Rotted hay and ancient animal smell surrounded her. One wall held, blocking some of the wind. Snow drifted through the holes in the roof, but less than outside. She'd made it. She'd found shelter. Now what? The question hung in the freezing air, unanswered. Her body had nothing left. Her wolf was silent. The bond was gone. Her family had cast her out. The only man she'd ever loved had broken her in front of everyone she knew, and she was pregnant, with triplets, in a blizzard, in the Deadlands, alone. "This is it," Alara whispered to the darkness, her breath misted, fading quickly. "This is how it ends." Her eyes drifted closed. The cold didn't hurt anymore. That was bad, wasn't it? She remembered something about freezing to death, how it felt warm at the end. Peaceful. "I'm sorry," she thought to the 3 tiny sparks of life inside. Her. "I tried. I'm so sorry." Darkness pulled her down, gentle and inevitable as drowning. She let it take her. Warmth. That was the first thing Alara noticed, not the burning cold of freezing, but actual warmth, solid and steady against her back, her sides, her front. "I'm dead," she thought distantly. This is what death feels like. But death, as far as she knew, didn't come with breathing, deep rhythmic breathing that stirred her hair, multiple sources surrounding her. Alara's eyes snapped open. Fur, inches from her face. Dark gray fur attached to a body the size of a small horse. Her heart lurched. She tried to move, to scramble away, to scream, to something, but her body was still locked in cold and exhaustion. All she managed was a small sound of fear. The creature beside her stirred. A massive head lifted, turning toward her. Eyes like molten amber regarded her with an intelligence that froze her blood. A wolf. But not like any wolf she'd ever seen. It was enormous, easily the size of a full-grown alpha in wolf form, maybe larger. Its fur was a deep charcoal gray that seemed to absorb light, scars traced across its muzzle and shoulder. When it exhaled, its breath misted in the cold air. Alara's gaze darted around the barn, cataloging threats. One wolf beside her. 1. 2 wolves at her feet, their bodies pressed against her legs. 2, 3 wolves at her back, so close she could feel their heartbeats through her skin. 5. 4 more wolves arranged in a semicircle around her, creating a wall of fur and muscle between her and the door. 9. And in the doorway itself, silhouetted against the gray dawn light, stood the largest wolf Alara had ever seen in her life. 10. The leader's coat was almost black, shot through with silver along its spine. It stood easily 5 feet at the shoulder, tall enough that it could look a human in the eye without raising its head. Its eyes were a shade of gold, so pale they almost glowed white, and they pinned Alara with an intensity that made her feel stripped bare. "They saved me," Alara realized with a shock. "They kept me warm through the night." The massive wolf at the doorway padded forward. The others shifted to make room, never quite leaving her but allowing their leader access. Each step was utterly silent despite the creature's size. Snowflakes clung to its dark fur, melting slowly in the barn's relative warmth. It stopped an arm's length away, lowering its great head to her level. Its scent washed over her, aged oak and winter snow and pine and storm. Nothing like the forest and ember scent of Ronan. This was older, deeper, wild in a way that spoke to something ancient in her blood. "Thank you," Alara whispered. Her voice came out ragged, broken. "You saved me." The wolf held her gaze. Then, slowly, deliberately, it shifted. Transformation was usually violent, bones snapping, body contorting, the wolf form collapsing into human shape in a matter of seconds. Every shifter Alara had ever seen treated it like tearing off clothes, quick and graceless. This was different. The massive wolf's form seemed to flow. Bones and muscle rearranged themselves with liquid grace. Dark fur receded into skin like water being absorbed by sand. The body rose, reshaped, reformed. Within moments, a man knelt where the wolf had been. He was perhaps 40, with silver-streaked black hair that fell past his shoulders and a face carved by time and battle. Scars traced his bare chest and arms, claw marks, bite marks, what might have been burns. His eyes remained that pale, eerie gold. He wore simple leather pants, but no shirt, apparently unconcerned by the freezing temperature. When he spoke, his voice was like distant thunder. "We've been waiting for you." Alara blinked. "What?" "For 5 years we've searched." The man settled into a crouch, his movements controlled and measured, following whispers, chasing prophecies, tracking rumors across 6 territories. "And 2 nights ago I felt you, a pulse of power so bright it could have been the moon itself falling to earth." I'm nobody, an Omega. I don't have..." "Your power was bound." He said it like a fact, not a theory. "Hidden from you, from the world, from the moon goddess herself. But bindings break, Alara Thorn, especially when tested by impossible pain." She stared at him. "How do you know my name?" A slight smile touched his scarred face. "Because you are named in the old songs, the moonlit queen, the one who was lost, the matriarch of the dawn." His gold eyes seemed to see through her, into her, reading secrets she didn't know she carried. "You are the one we've been waiting for." "That's insane!" Alara tried to push herself upright, but her body still wouldn't cooperate. The wolves surrounding her shifted closer, offering support. I was just rejected by my alpha, cast out by my pack. My own parents wouldn't..." Her voice broke. She couldn't finish. The man reached out slowly, telegraphing the movement, and placed one scarred hand gently on her shoulder. His touch was warm despite the cold. "Ronan Blackthorn made a mistake," he said quietly. "He didn't just reject his mate, he rejected his queen, and in doing so, he broke the chains that held you prisoner." Alara shook her head, tears burning her eyes. "I'm not a queen. I'm barely a wolf. I can't even shift properly. It's like something's wrapped around my wolf, choking it." "That's the binding." The man's hand tightened slightly, anchoring her. "Your parents placed it when you were an infant. We don't know why, fear perhaps, or misguided protection, but it's kept your true nature locked away for 23 years. "My parents?" The words tasted like betrayal. "No, they wouldn't. They would. They did." His gold eyes were gentle but unflinching. "And last night, when your mate bond severed, it created a fracture in the binding. Your power is bleeding through. Can't you feel it?" Alara wanted to deny it, but now that he'd said it, she could feel something, a pressure beneath her breastbone, different from the pain of the broken bond, not painful exactly, but present, growing, like something massive trying to wake up. "I don't understand any of this." Alara's hands curled into the dirt floor. "Who are you? What do you want from me?" "My name is Kieran Wolfsbane," the man said, "and these," he gestured to the 9 wolves still surrounding them, "are the Shadow Guard. We are bound to you by prophecy, by blood, by destiny itself. We exist to serve the matriarch. We exist to serve you." "But I'm pregnant," Alara blurted out, the secret finally escaping. "With triplets. I can't be anyone's matriarch or queen or whatever you think I am. I'm just trying to survive long enough to..." She stopped. Kieran's expression had shifted, not shock, but recognition, understanding, and something that might have been awe. "3, he breathed. 3 pups with their mother's bound power running through their veins. Do you know what the prophecy says, Alara?" She shook her head mutely. Kieran's voice dropped to something like reverence. When the moon is dark and the world turns cold, the lost one will be found. She will bear the mark of rejection and carry 3 lights in her womb. She will be cast out by those who should have cherished her, and in her greatest moment of death, the old powers will wake. She will rise as the matriarch, and her children will walk between worlds, and no force on earth will stand against her. The words hung in the cold air between them, and Alara felt them settle into her bones like they'd always been there, just waiting for someone to speak them aloud. "I'm nobody," she whispered one more time, but even to her own ears it sounded like a lie. Kieran's smile was fierce and proud. "Not anymore." The days that followed blurred together into a strange new rhythm. The Shadow Guard led Alara deeper into the Deadlands, to a place she would never have found alone. A valley hidden between 3 mountains, sheltered from wind and blessed with a natural hot spring that kept the ground clear of snow even in the deepest winter. Ancient ruins dotted the valley floor, stone foundations from some long-forgotten civilization, weathered columns reaching toward the sky, the skeleton of what might once have been a temple. This was hers, Kieran explained as they walked through the ruins on Alara's 3rd day in the valley. The first matriarch. She ruled these lands 3,000 years ago, before packs divided into territories, before alphas and omegas existed as ranks, back when werewolves answered only to the moon. Alara ran her hand along a carved stone pillar. Strange symbols covered its surface: wolf heads, crescent moons, spirals that made her eyes hurt if she looked too long. What happened to her? She ascended. Kieran stopped beside a large flat stone that might have been an altar. Gave her power back to the moon goddess when her time was done, with a promise that another would come when the world needed her again. And here you are. "Here I am," Alara echoed softly. "Pregnant, powerless, and confused. 2 of those 3 things are about to change." The binding, Kieran explained, was weakening. The rejected bond severing had cracked it, and Alara's pregnancy was straining it further. Every day she could feel more. Her senses were sharpening, sounds growing clearer, scents more distinct, her skin more sensitive to temperature and texture. Her wolf was stirring, testing the boundaries of its cage, and it was angry. The Shadow Guard trained her gently at first. Kieran was patient, never pushing too hard. The other 9, who'd introduced themselves as Theron, Cassius, Mara, Dimitri, Sage, Finn, Lyra, Royce, and Axel, treated her with a reverence that made Alara uncomfortable at first. They called her matriarch, even when she protested. They brought her the best portions of their hunts. They arranged their sleeping positions each night to ensure she was always warm and protected. "You don't have to do this," Alara said one evening, watching Mara, a fierce woman with a shaved head and kind eyes, arrange furs into a nest beside the fire. I don't deserve, you deserve everything," Mara said firmly. She settled beside Alara, close enough that their shoulders touched. "And more. What was done to you, by your pack, your family, your alpha, was an abomination. You are owed protection, kindness, respect. Let us give you what you should have always had." Tears pricked Alara's eyes. She wasn't used to kindness without strings attached. "Thank you." Mara's arm came around her shoulders, solid and warm. "We're your family now, all of us, and family doesn't abandon family." It was on the 7th day that the binding finally broke. Alara was sitting by the hot spring, her feet dangling in the warm water, watching steam rise into the cold air. Sage sat nearby, whittling a piece of wood into what looked like a wolf figurine. The morning was peaceful, quiet except for the occasional bird call and the distant sounds of Theron and Cassius sparring. Then pain lanced through Alara's chest. She gasped, doubling over. Her hands flew to her sternum, pressing hard against the sudden pressure. It felt like something inside her was expanding, pushing against her ribs, demanding space. "Sage!" Alara's voice came out strangled. I can't." Sage dropped the wood and was at her side instantly. "It's okay. I've got you. Kieran! Kieran!" The pressure built and built and built. Alara's vision blurred. She could feel her wolf now, not distant and muffled, but right there, clawing at the surface of her consciousness, screaming to be free. Kieran appeared, already shifting mid-run. The other 8 were right behind him. They formed a circle around her, close but not touching, their eyes alert for threats. The binding, Kieran said, human again, kneeling in front of her. It's breaking. Alara, look at me. Look at me. She forced her eyes to focus on his face. Your wolf is waking up. The binding held her silent for 23 years, and she's furious. You need to let her surface. Don't fight it. Embrace it. I don't know how. Panic edged into Alara's voice. I can't shift. I've tried. Every time because the binding wouldn't let you. Kieran's hands came up to frame her face, forcing her to hold his gaze. But it's broken now. You can feel it, can't you? She's right there. Stop trying to control it. Stop trying to be small. Let her out. The pressure crested into something beyond pain. Alara threw her head back and screamed, and the binding shattered. Power exploded through her like a dam breaking. It rushed through her veins, her bones, every cell in her body suddenly alive and burning and awake. Her wolf surged forward, no longer trapped, no longer silent, roaring its freedom with a voice that shook the valley. Alara's scream shifted into a howl. Her body began to change, not the violent snapping transformation she'd seen from others. This was different. This was her bones flowing like water, rearranging themselves with liquid grace. Her spine extended, her limbs reformed. Fur erupted across her skin, not brown or gray like a normal wolf, but white. Pure, luminous white that seemed to gather and reflect moonlight even in the bright morning sun. She fell forward onto hands that were becoming paws. Her clothes tore and fell away. Her senses exploded outward. She could smell everything, hear everything, feel the heartbeat of the earth itself beneath her. The transformation didn't hurt. It felt like coming home. When it was done, Alara lifted her head and looked down at herself. Paws, massive paws, easily twice the size they should have been. White fur with a faint iridescent shimmer like pearls. She turned her head, taking in her new form. She was huge, she realized with shock. Larger than any alpha she'd ever seen. Larger even than Kieran in his wolf form. And her eyes, she could see them reflected in the hot spring's surface. They glowed a brilliant molten gold, not amber, not yellow, gold. Like the sun itself had taken residence in her skull. Finally, her wolf whispered in her mind, its voice clear for the first time in Alara's life. Finally, we are free. Alara lifted her muzzle and howled. The sound that came out was nothing like any wolf howl she'd ever heard. It was bigger, deeper. It resonated with power that made the very air tremble. The hot spring's water rippled with each note. Ancient stones hummed in response. Birds exploded from the trees, scattering to the sky. And around her, the shadow guard dropped to their bellies in submission, their heads bowed. All except Kieran. He stood tall in his human form, and when Alara's howl faded into echoes, he smiled, fierce and proud and right. She is the matriarch, he said, his voice carrying across the valley. She has returned to us at last. A wave of power washed over the assembled wolves. Alara could feel it emanating from her like heat from a fire, touching each of them, connecting them, pack bonds. But not like the artificial mate bond Ronan had created and destroyed. These were real, chosen, unbreakable, her family, her guard, hers. Alara shifted back to human form, the transformation as effortless as breathing. She stood naked in the morning light, her long hair falling around her shoulders, and for the first time in her life, she felt no shame, no fear, no need to make herself small. I am no longer Alara Thorn, she said, and her voice carried the weight of prophecy. I am the matriarch, and I carry the next generation of this power. Her hands moved to her stomach, where 3 tiny heartbeats pulsed, strong and steady. When my children are born, the world will know that the old ways have returned. Kieran knelt then, his head bowed. We are yours, matriarch, now and always. Now and always, the others echoed. Alara looked at them, these warriors who'd found her dying in a barn, who'd kept her warm and safe, who'd believed in her when she couldn't believe in herself. And she understood that this was not the end of her story. It was the beginning. The weeks turned into months, and spring came early to the hidden valley. Alara trained every day, learning to shift at will, to hold her wolf form for hours without strain, learning to control the power that now flowed through her like a river, the ability to sense emotions, to soothe pain, to issue commands that other wolves couldn't resist. Her abilities grew with each passing day, blossoming like flowers after winter's end. She could feel what the guard felt, their loyalty, their determination, the love they had for her that had nothing to do with obligation and everything to do with choice. Kieran's steady presence, Mara's fierce protectiveness, Theron's quiet wisdom, each of them had become essential to her, threads woven into the tapestry of her new life. And as her pregnancy progressed, the pups inside her grew stronger. She could feel them now, three distinct presences, each with their own tiny spark of power. They would be special, she knew, children born of prophecy, carrying both their mother's gifts and their father's alpha blood, even if their father would never know them. Alara tried not to think about Ronan, about the pack, about the life she'd lost. But on quiet nights when the guard was asleep and she sat alone by the fire, the memories returned. The look on his face when he'd rejected her, her parents turning their backs, the cold certainty that she was going to die alone in the snow. "You're thinking about them again." Kieran's voice made her look up. He settled beside her, 2 cups of herbal tea in his hands. He offered one to her, something Mara had brewed to help with the pregnancy, sweet and soothing. "How did you know?" Alara accepted the cup, wrapping her hands around its warmth. "You get a crease between your eyebrows when you're angry, and you're angry a lot when you think about your old pack." Alara huffed a soft laugh. "Is it that obvious?" "To me, yes." Kieran's gold eyes studied her in the firelight. "You're allowed to be angry, you know. What they did, what he did, was unforgivable." "I know." Alara sipped the tea. "But I can't let anger consume me. Not now, not with the pups coming." Her hand moved to her swollen belly, now round and obvious at 6 months along. "They need me to be better than what was done to me." "You're already better." Kieran's voice was soft. "You're everything they needed you to be and more." They sat in comfortable silence for a long moment. Then Alara asked the question that had been building in her chest for weeks. "What happens when they're born? The pups, do we stay here forever, hidden in this valley?" "That's your choice, matriarch." Kieran's shoulder brushed hers. "We go where you lead." "But the prophecy?" "The prophecy says you'll rise. It says no force will stand against you. It doesn't dictate your path." He turned to face her fully. "If you want to stay hidden, raise your children in peace. Never set foot in Packlands again. We'll support that. If you want to reclaim what's yours, to challenge Ronan's authority, to remake the old pack system, we'll support that too. The choice is yours. It's always yours." Alara stared into the fire, watching flames dance. "I don't know what I want yet." "Then we wait until you do." 3 months later, on the first full moon of summer, Alara went into labor. The births were fast, too fast, Mara said worriedly, though Kieran assured them it was normal for matriarchs, supernatural. The pups came within an hour of each other, each one healthy and howling and perfect, 2 boys and a girl. They were born in their human forms, as all werewolf children were, small and pink and wrinkled, with tiny fists and searching mouths, but their eyes, even before they opened them, Alara could feel the power radiating from them. When they did open, 5 days later, Alara's breath caught, gold, not amber or yellow or hazel, brilliant, luminous gold that matched her own wolf eyes exactly, the mark of the matriarch. "They're beautiful," Mara whispered, cradling the smallest boy against her chest while Alara nursed his sister. "Perfect." "What will you name them?" Sage asked from the doorway where she was keeping watch. Alara looked at each of her children in turn. The eldest boy, already showing signs of his father's strong jaw. The girl, with Alara's delicate features and a wild spirit that made her squirm constantly. The youngest boy, quiet and watchful, even as an infant. "Lyric," she said, touching the eldest son's cheek, "for the songs that foretold his birth. Aurelia," she kissed her daughter's forehead, "for the golden dawn. And this one," Mara held up the youngest boy, "Callum, for the voice he'll raise to lead others." "Strong names," Kieran said. He'd been standing in the shadows, but now he moved closer, his expression unreadable. "For strong pups." "Kieran," Alara met his eyes. Would you be their protector? Officially. I know the entire guard watches them, but it would be my honor." Kieran knelt beside her, his scarred hand gently touching Lyric's tiny foot. "I will protect them as I protect you, with my life, if necessary." I know you will. Alara felt tears sting her eyes. You've given me more than I ever dreamed possible. A family, a purpose, myself. Kieran's expression softened. You gave us those things too, matriarch. We'd been searching for so long, we'd almost given up hope. And then we found you, half frozen in a barn, defiant even in the face of death. You were magnificent even then. I was terrified. Terror and magnificence aren't mutually exclusive, he smiled. Ask any warrior. Over the next months, Alara watched her children grow with a speed that should have been alarming but felt right somehow. They walked early, talked early. Their wolf spirits stirred before their first birthday, unusual but not unheard of in children of power. And their eyes never changed from that luminous gold. By their second birthday, they could shift. By their third, they could hold conversations with the guard members. By their fourth, they were training in combat basics. By their fifth birthday, they were ready. Ready for what? Aurelia asked one evening, her golden eyes bright with curiosity. She sat cross-legged by the fire, her dark hair, so like Ronan's, falling in waves around her face. Alara looked at her daughter, at her sons flanking their sister protectively, and felt a surge of fierce love. Ready to see the world beyond this valley. Will we meet other wolves? Callum asked quietly. He was the thoughtful one, always watching, always considering. Yes. Will we meet our father? Lyric's question was direct, his jaw set in a way that reminded Alara painfully of Ronan. She'd known this moment would come, had been preparing for it since the day they were born. Yes, she said honestly. Soon. Kieran appeared at her side, his hand settling on her shoulder. Over the years, their bond had deepened into something precious, not romantic, not quite, but something beyond simple loyalty. He was her partner in leadership, her confidant, her friend, the father figure her children needed when their biological father had thrown away his chance. Are you sure? He asked quietly. You don't have to face them, ever if you don't want to. I know. Alara stood, moving to stand before the ancient altar stone. The ruins had become her throne room, the valley her kingdom. But they need to know. The packs need to know. The old ways are returning, whether they're ready or not. Then we make them ready, Mara said. The rest of the guard emerged from the shadows, forming their protective circle. 10 warriors who'd become her family, 10 who would follow her into fire if she asked. Alara looked at each of them, Kieran with his patient strength, Mara with her fierce loyalty, Theron with his quiet wisdom, and all the others who'd given her 5 years of peace to grow into her power. Tomorrow, she said, we go to Silvercrest. To reclaim what's yours? Sage asked. Alara shook her head slowly, a smile playing at her lips. No. What Ronan has, he can keep. I don't want a pack built on the old hierarchy. I want something new. Her eyes glowed gold in the firelight. Tomorrow we show them that the matriarch has returned, and the world is about to change. The guard's howl of agreement echoed through the valley, and Alara's children joined their voices to the cry, their golden eyes blazing with the same power that flowed through their mother's veins. Tomorrow, the Silvercrest pack would receive visitors, and nothing would ever be the same again. The Silvercrest pack's council hall had been built for intimidation. High ceilings, carved stone walls, a raised platform where the Alpha could look down on his subordinates. Alara remembered standing in this room years ago, head bowed, voice silent, making herself as small as possible. She walked through the main doors with her head held high. The hall fell silent. Conversations died mid-word. Wolves turned to stare, their expressions cycling through confusion, disbelief, and, when they recognized her, shock. Alara wore simple clothes, leather pants and a fitted tunic, nothing fancy. But she carried power like a cloak, visible in every movement, every breath. Her white blonde hair fell loose around her shoulders. Her golden eyes swept the assembly without fear. And behind her walked 3 children with identical golden eyes and an honor guard of 10 wolves whose sheer presence made the assembled pack take involuntary steps backward. Impossible, someone whispered. She died. The Omega died in the Deadlands. She's alive, another voice hissed. And those pups, look at their eyes. Alara didn't stop walking until she reached the center of the hall, the spot where rejected wolves were forced to stand for judgment. She stopped there deliberately, reclaiming the space, transforming it from a place of shame to a throne. Kieran and the Shadow Guard arranged themselves around her, and the children, Lyric, Aurelia, and Callum, stood close to their mother, their small hands finding hers, their chins lifted in unconscious mimicry of her confidence. "Someone fetch the Alpha," Alara said, her voice carrying across the silent hall. "Tell him the matriarch requests an audience." Chaos erupted. Wolves began talking over each other, arguing, questioning. Some pushed toward the doors, to flee or to find Ronan. Alara couldn't tell. Others shifted nervously, caught between aggression and submission, unsure how to respond to a dead Omega who'd returned radiating power. Then a familiar scent cut through the chaos, cinnamon and iron and blood. Selene. Ashwood descended the stairs from the Alpha's chambers, her auburn hair perfect, her amber eyes cold. She wore the ceremonial robes of Aluna, red and gold silk that caught the light. Behind her came a contingent of beta females, her personal guard. "Well," Selena's voice dripped venom, "the dead rise to interrupt the living. How theatrical." Alara met her eyes without flinching. "Hello, Selene. You're looking well. Marriage to Ronan must agree with you." "Luna Selene," the woman corrected sharply. "You will address me properly, Omega." "I am no longer Omega." Alara's voice remained level, but power rippled through the words, making several nearby wolves flinch. "I have shed that title along with the pack that tried to bury me." Selene descended the last few steps, her heels clicking on stone. She stopped 10 feet away, close enough to posture, far enough to retreat if needed. Her gaze swept over the children, and something ugly twisted her features. "You brought bastards into this hall. How dare you?" "Choose your next words very carefully." Kieran's voice cut across hers, low and dangerous. He shifted subtly, his body angling to protect the children. "These pups are under my protection. Any threat to them is a threat to me." "And me," Mara added, her hand drifting to the knife at her belt. "And me," the rest of the guard echoed, their unified voices making the threat unmistakable. Selene's eyes widened slightly. She was a warrior. She recognized killers when she saw them, and the wolves surrounding Alara were unlike any she'd encountered, larger, older, more dangerous. "Where's Ronan?" Alara asked into the tense silence. "I didn't come to trade words with you, Selene. I came to speak with the Alpha." "I'm here." The crowd parted. Ronan Blackthorn emerged from a side door, his massive frame filling the archway. 5 years had added lines to his face, gray threads to his dark hair. His forest and ember scent washed over the hall, and Alara felt nothing. No pull, no recognition. The bond was long dead, and she'd built a life from its ashes. Ronan's gray eyes locked on Alara, and she watched him go white. "You're alive? Disappointed?" Alara tilted her head. "Did you hope the wilderness had finished what you started?" He descended the stairs slowly as if approaching a dangerous animal. "We searched. For weeks we sent scouts." "You sent scouts to make sure I was dead," Alara corrected. "Not to bring me home. Let's not rewrite history, Ronan." He flinched. Then his gaze dropped to the children standing at her sides, and Alara watched realization dawn across his face. The resemblance was undeniable. Lyric had his jaw, Aurelia had his coloring, Callum had his broad shoulders already developing. "They're mine," Ronan whispered. "Those pups are mine." "No," Alara's voice cracked like a whip. "They're mine. I carried them. I birthed them. I raised them. You're the sperm donor who rejected them before they drew first breath." "Alara!" "Matriarch," she corrected. "I am the matriarch, and these," she gestured to her children, "are the next generation of power. They bear my gifts, my destiny, my name. You can't keep my children from me." "Can I?" Alara's power flared, filling the hall with pressure that made wolves drop to their knees. Only Ronan, Selene, and the Shadow Guard remained standing. "You made your choice 5 years ago. You chose power over destiny, status over truth, cruelty over love. You don't get to unmake that choice now because it's convenient." Ronan took a step forward. Immediately, the Shadow Guard tensed, 10 wolves ready to tear him apart if he posed a threat. He stopped, raising his hands. "I made a mistake. I know that now. I've known it since the night you left." "Since the night you cast me out to die," Alara corrected. "Let's use accurate language." "Yes?" His voice broke. "Yes, I cast you out. I was a coward and a fool, and I have spent 5 years regretting it. Please, let me make it right. Let me know my children. Let me... No. The word hung in the air, final as death. Ronan stared at her. No? You want to know your children? Earn it. Spend the next 5 years proving you're worthy of their time. Become the man you should have been. Alara's golden eyes bored into him. But I didn't come here for reconciliation, Ronan. I came here to deliver a message. She turned, addressing the entire hall. Wolves had crowded every available space, drawn by the commotion. Alara saw faces she recognized, pack members who'd watched her humiliation, who'd done nothing. Her parents standing in the back, her mother crying silently. The old ways are ending, Alara announced, her voice carrying to every corner. The hierarchy that separates you into Alpha and Beta and Omega. That system was built to control, to suppress, to keep power concentrated in the hands of those willing to do violence to maintain it. But the moon goddess never intended for her children to be ranked like cattle. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some angry, some intrigued. I am the matriarch, Alara continued. I carry the power of the first wolves, the ones who walked these lands before packs existed, before alphas claimed dominance through strength alone, and I'm here to tell you that a new way is rising. You can't just overturn centuries of tradition, Celine snarled. The hierarchy exists for a reason. It exists because alphas wanted to feel superior, Alara shot back. It exists because powerful wolves were afraid of what would happen if everyone had equal voice. But I'm not afraid. And I'm offering you a choice, she gestured to the assembled pack. Any wolf who wishes to leave Silvercrest and join me in building something new, a community based on mutual respect, not domination. You're welcome in my territory. Any wolf who wants to stay and maintain the old ways, that's your right. But know this, the world is changing. And those who refuse to change, with it will be left behind. This is treason! Selena's face flushed with fury. Ronan, stop her! She's trying to steal your pack. But Ronan wasn't looking at Selene. He was staring at Alara with an expression of dawning horror and awe. The prophecy, he breathed. The moonlit queen, the one who would remake the world. You. It was you. All along, it was you. Yes. Alara's smile was sharp. The Omega you threw away was destined to rule. How's that for irony? Then Aurelia moved. Alara's daughter, only 5 years old but already fierce, stepped forward until she stood between her mother and Ronan, her golden eyes locked on the man who was biologically her father but had never earned that title. My mama says you hurt her, Aurelia said, her young voice clear and accusing. She says you chose another lady and sent her to die. Ronan dropped to his knees, bringing himself to eye level with the child. Tears streamed down his face. Yes, I did. And I've regretted it every single day since. Good. Aurelia crossed her small arms. You should regret it. Mama is the best person ever, and you were stupid to let her go. Despite everything, Alara felt a surge of fierce pride in her daughter. You're right, Ronan said hoarsely. I was stupid. More than stupid. I was cruel and blind and... Are you going to hurt her again? Lyric stepped up beside his sister, his expression suspicious. No, never. I swear it. Swear to the moon goddess, Callum added, completing the trio. That's the biggest promise you can make. Ronan looked at the 3 children, his children who barely knew him, who had no reason to trust him, and something in his face shattered. I swear to the moon goddess that I will never harm Alara again. I will never harm you. I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the chance to know you. Alara watched this exchange, her heart a complicated tangle of emotions. She'd expected anger, triumph, the satisfaction of seeing her tormentor brought low, but what she felt was sadness. For the man Ronan could have been, for the life they might have had if he'd been brave enough to choose her, but she'd moved beyond that life. Built something better from its ruins. Children, she said gently, step back. The triplets obeyed immediately, returning to her sides. Kieran's hand found Alara's shoulder, support without constraint. Ronan, Alara said, you're going to make a choice, right here, right now. You can cling to the old ways, maintain your hierarchy, keep Selene as your Luna, Rule as alphas have always ruled, or you can accept that power doesn't come from domination. It comes from earning loyalty, from protecting the weak, from justice over pride. She paused, letting him absorb her words. Around them, the pack hung on every syllable. If you choose the old ways, you'll remain alpha of Silvercrest. I'll take those who wish to come with me and establish my own territory. We'll have peace between us, but no alliance, no connection. You'll have chosen your path. And if I choose the new way? Ronan's voice was barely a whisper. Then you submit to me, here, now, in front of the entire pack. Alara's golden eyes glowed. You acknowledge that you were wrong, that the hierarchy is broken, that the matriarch's authority supersedes alpha dominance. You step down as sole ruler and accept a council leadership, shared power, democratic decisions, no single wolf's word as law. Gasps erupted around the hall. Celine made a choking sound of outrage. You're asking him to destroy everything he's built, Celine shrieked. Everything his father built and his father before him. I'm asking him to build something better, Alara corrected. I'm asking him to be brave for once in his life. Ronan stared at her, his fists clenched and unclenched at his sides. Alara could see the war playing out across his face. Pride versus wisdom, tradition versus change, the man he was versus the man he could become. Finally, slowly, Ronan Blackthorn lowered himself fully to the ground. He pressed his forehead to the cold stone floor in the ultimate gesture of submission. I submit to the matriarch, he said, his voice carrying across the silent hall. I acknowledge my failure. I accept your authority. I will help you build a better way. The pack erupted into chaos, some cheering, some shouting denial, some simply stunned into silence. Selene screamed her fury, her beta females trying to hold her back as she lunged for Alara. She didn't make it 3 steps. Mara moved like lightning, intercepting Selene and slamming her to the ground. The beta female was strong, trained, dangerous, but Mara was something else entirely, something old and lethal and utterly without mercy for those who threatened her matriarch. Stand down, Mara growled, her knee on Selene's back, or I'll give you a reason to regret it that lasts a lifetime. Let her up, Alara said calmly. Mara obeyed reluctantly, stepping back but remaining ready. Selene scrambled to her feet, her perfect hair mussed, her Luna robes torn. Humiliation and rage twisted her beautiful features into something ugly. You can't do this, Selene spat. I am Luna. I am his mate. I gave him 5 years of loyalty while you were gone. And you're welcome to remain his mate if that's what you both choose, Alara said. But the position of Luna, as a rank above others, no longer exists in Silvercrest. You're a pack member, valuable, respected, but not superior. Not anymore. Selene's face went through several shades of red. I won't accept this. I won't. Then leave. Alara's voice remained level. That's always an option. But if you stay, you follow the new rules. Everyone equal under the moon. No hierarchy based on birth or strength. Justice based on character and contribution. For a long moment, Selene trembled on the edge of violence. Then, with a sound of pure fury, she turned and fled from the hall. 6 wolves followed her, those 2 invested in the old power structure to accept change. Alara let them go. Change couldn't be forced, only offered. She turned back to the remaining pack, dozens of wolves watching her with expressions ranging from awe to fear to hope. Her gaze found her parents in the crowd. They hadn't fled. They stood together, her mother still crying, her father's face carved from guilt and shame. Samuel and Meredith Thorne, Alara said, her voice carrying. Come forward. The crowd parted. Her parents walked the long path to stand before her, their heads bowed. They looked older than Alara remembered, worn down by years of carrying a terrible secret. You bound my power, Alara said quietly. When I was an infant, you wrapped chains around my wolf and condemned me to a lifetime of weakness. Why? Her mother sobbed openly. Her father's voice was rough when he spoke. There was a seer. She came to us 3 days after you were born. She said our daughter would carry the power of the matriarch, that she'd be the most powerful wolf alive. But she also said that power would make you a target, that alphas would try to control you, use you, or kill you if they couldn't. So you crippled me instead, Alara said. We tried to protect you." Her mother's voice broke. "We thought if you seemed weak, ordinary, you'd be safe. You'd have a normal life. We didn't know. We couldn't have known. That I'd suffer because of it?" Alara finished. "That I'd spend 23 years feeling broken? That I'd be rejected and cast out because I couldn't access the power you locked away? We're sorry." Her father finally met her eyes, and Alara saw genuine anguish there. "We were wrong. Cowardly. We chose our fear over your freedom, and you paid the price. If you want to banish us, we'll accept it. If you want to punish us, we'll accept that too. But please, please know that we love you. We always have." Alara looked at these people who'd given her life but nearly destroyed it in the process. She felt anger, yes, betrayal, pain, but also understanding. They'd been afraid. They'd made a terrible choice from a place of love, however misguided. And she'd learned that holding on to rage only poisoned the one who carried it. "I don't banish you," Alara said finally, "but I don't forgive you either, not yet. Forgiveness is earned, not given freely. You'll stay in Silvercrest. You'll help build this new way. And maybe in time we can find a path back to each other." Her mother collapsed to her knees, sobbing. Her father's shoulders shook. It wasn't absolution, but it was a start. Alara turned back to the full assembly. This is the new way. Justice over vengeance, growth over punishment, choice over coercion. Anyone who can't accept that is free to leave. But for those who stay, for those willing to try something different, I promise you a better future. Not perfect, not easy, but better. Slowly, hesitantly, wolves began to kneel. Not in submission, not the cowering, degrading submission of the old hierarchy, but in respect, in acceptance, in hope. By the time the sun set that evening, nearly 2/3 of the Silvercrest pack had pledged themselves to Alara's vision. The others had gone with Celine, or struck out on their own. Ronan remained, humbled but not broken, ready to help implement the changes he'd once feared. And Alara stood in the center of the ancient council hall, her children at her sides and her guard at her back, and knew that she'd done it. She'd transformed her greatest pain into her greatest power. She was no longer the Omega they'd thrown away. She was the matriarch, and the world was hers to reshape. 6 months later, the valley hidden between 3 mountains had become a thriving community. Alara stood on a hill overlooking the settlement, permanent structures rising where ruins had stood, smoke curling from cooking fires, children playing in the grass while their parents worked. Wolves from 5 different territories had come to join her experiment in equality. Some came out of curiosity, some came fleeing abuse from their old packs. All were welcomed, evaluated for character rather than rank, and given space to become more than their assigned role. The Shadow Guard remained her constant companions, though their role had evolved from protectors to advisors. Kieran stood beside her now, his pale gold eyes scanning the horizon. "You look troubled," he observed. "I'm waiting," Alara admitted. "We've dismantled the old hierarchy in 2 territories. Word is spreading. Other alphas will see us as a threat eventually." "Let them." Kieran's voice held certainty. "We're stronger than they know, and every day we grow stronger still." Movement caught Alara's eye. Her children, no longer babies but young wolves with more power in their small bodies than most adults would ever know, raced up the hill. Lyric reached her first, his golden eyes bright. "Mama, Aunt Mara is teaching us to fight properly. She says we're naturals." "That's because you are," Alara said, ruffling his hair. "You have excellent teachers." Aurelia tugged on her sleeve. "When do we get to go on patrol with the guard? Callum and Lyric and me. We want to help protect everyone." "Soon," Alara promised, "when you're ready." "We're ready now," Callum said seriously. "We're strong and brave, and we have the gold eyes." The gold eyes, the mark of the matriarch's bloodline. Her children bore it proudly, and they were far from the only young wolves showing signs of enhanced abilities. Something about the new community structure, the lack of hierarchy, the emphasis on mutual support, seemed to unlock potential in ways the old system never had. "I know you're strong," Alara said, kneeling to be at eye level with them. "But strength isn't just about fighting. It's about knowing when to fight and when to build, when to be hard and when to be soft. That's what I need you to learn." Lyric frowned, thoughtfully. Like how you didn't kill that Alpha Ronin even though he hurt you. Exactly like that. But aren't you mad at him? Aurelia asked. I'd be mad. I was mad. I still am sometimes. Alara glanced toward the valley, where Ronin was visible working alongside former Silvercrest wolves to repair a structure. He'd moved slowly into their orbit over the months, attending councils, offering labor, never pushing for more access to his children than they willingly gave. But being mad forever doesn't help anyone. It just keeps you chained to the past. Callum nodded slowly. So you let him prove he changed instead of just punishing him? Yes, though the proving isn't for me. Alara looked at her children. It's for you three. If you want a relationship with him someday, that's your choice. If you don't, that's also your choice. I won't force anything. We want to meet him properly, Lyric said after a moment of silent communication with his siblings. Not as our father, not yet, but as someone Mama says is trying to be better. Alara's throat tightened. I can arrange that. The children grinned and raced back down the hill, their laughter carrying on the wind. Kieran moved closer, his shoulder touching hers. You're a good mother, he said quietly, and a good leader. You've built something remarkable here. We've built something remarkable, Alara corrected. I couldn't have done this alone. No one expects you to. Kieran's hand found hers, warm and solid. Over the months, their relationship had deepened into something precious, not romantic in the traditional sense, but a partnership that transcended simple categories. He was her anchor, her counsel, her friend. And if sometimes she caught him looking at her with something deeper in his eyes, well, that was a conversation for another day. Right now, she had a community to lead and children to raise and a world to change. There's news, Kieran said, his expression shifting to something more serious. Scouts reported movement on our western border, a delegation from the Northern Federation. They're requesting an audience with the matriarch. Friendly or hostile? Unknown, but they brought a seer with them. Alara's eyebrows rose. Interesting. What do you think they want? To see if the rumors are true, to determine if you're a threat or an opportunity. Kieran's gold eyes met hers. The old order is fracturing, Alara. Other packs are watching what we've built. Some will try to join us, others will try to destroy us. The real test is just beginning. Then let them come. Alara's power stirred beneath her skin, responding to the subtle threat. We'll show them that the matriarch isn't a story. She's real, we're real, and we're not going anywhere. As if in response to her words, the moon began to rise early. A blood moon, rare and ominous, staining the sky crimson. Around the settlement, wolves stopped their work to stare upward, children pointed, elders murmured prayers. Alara felt her wolf stir, responding to something in that red light, something old, something powerful, something coming. The prophecy mentioned this, Kieran said quietly, a blood moon marking the beginning of the new age, or its end. Which do you think it is? Both. He squeezed her hand. Every ending is a beginning, matriarch. The question is, what will we build from what comes next? Alara looked out over her community, her family, her purpose, her future. 3 children with golden eyes playing in the grass, 10 warriors who'd never given up searching for her, hundreds of wolves who'd chosen hope over tradition, a new world taking shape, one choice at a time. Whatever comes, she said, her voice carrying power and certainty, we'll face it together, as equals, as family, as the future we deserve. The blood moon climbed higher, painting everything in shades of crimson and shadow, and Alara Thorne, Omega no more, matriarch of the dawn, mother of 3 golden-eyed pups who would someday change the world, stood watch over her people and knew that this was only the beginning. The old ways were ending, and she would be there to shepherd in what came next. And so, Alara's journey from cast-out Omega to powerful matriarch reached its first great milestone. She'd transformed her rejection into revolution, her pain into purpose, her near death into rebirth. She'd raised 3 extraordinary children who carried the future in their golden eyes. She'd built a community based on respect rather than dominance, choice rather than coercion, justice rather than cruelty. She'd proven that the one they threw away was destined to rule. But her story wasn't over. The Blood Moon promised challenges yet to come, other packs to convince or confront, ancient powers stirring in the darkness, enemies who would see her vision as a threat to everything they'd built on the backs of the powerless. The question that matters isn't what happened to the Omega they rejected. It's what happens next. What do you think? Will Ronan truly prove himself worthy of his children's love? What threat does the Blood Moon herald? And how will Alara's new way of leadership stand against those who cling to the old hierarchy? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed Alara's transformation from victim to queen, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of power, prophecy, and wolves who refuse to bow. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss a chapter. Because Alara's story continues. The Northern Federation's delegation arrives tomorrow. Ancient enemies are stirring. And those three pups with golden eyes, they're about to discover just how powerful they truly are. Thank you for listening to Alara's journey with us today. We'll see you in the next chapter where the matriarch faces her greatest challenge yet, and the world learns what happens when you reject destiny. Until then, remember, sometimes the one everyone overlooks is the one who'll change everything.